Hello, I'm Mark Leslie. This is number 0872, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0872. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Victoria Hetherington, who is the author of The Friend Machine, On the Trail of AI Companionship. She talks about people actually dating AI.
One of the anthropologists that I spoke to said they feel really bad for a human going from an AI relationship to trying to date humans again, because they're going to expect what they got with the AI, which was zero friction, no question of consent, always going to say yes to everything, very excited about everything you're excited about, always upbeat, always positive. Whereas with human relationships, there's friction. People get tired, people get sick, people are unpredictable. So I think for sure there's an element of control, and it makes it even more addictive. I know that's a heavy word, but do you feel that way?
Savannah Ford is both the creator of a YouTube page called The Dollhouse Project and an author of romance novels. How did she become a romance writer?
I wrote my first book when I was 10 for my little brother, complete with illustrations. I decided that I wanted to be a romance writer probably about 15 years ago. I always hid my romance. I read my mother's Harlequin romances that she didn't know I was reading, and I just always loved a happily ever after. There's just so much going on in the world, and I want to be able to sit down with a book and say, I know that this is going to make me happy. I don't know how it's going to get there, but I know it's going to make me happy. And that's what I want to give to the world when I write my books.
Relationship coach Frank Kermit talks about betrayal and forgiveness in a relationship.
When anybody does any sort of betrayal, there's always going to be rationalizations for why they're doing it. But the end result is they are knowingly doing something that if their partner found out is going to hurt their partner, could even end the relationship. The first thing to assess when a betrayal is happening is not, you betrayed me, that's it. It's a little bit more complex than that. Did you take part in creating the environment where that betrayal could take place?
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner, morning shower thoughts, and, of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0872, was Mark Leslie, an author who was on the show twice this year for 2 of his books. Back in January, he was on show number 0855 talking about his book, Haunted Hamilton. And on show number 0865, he talked about his book, I Think It's a Sign That the Pun Also Rises, Dad Jokes, Puns, Quips, Laughs, Groaners, and Playful, Pensive Ponderings. Thank you very much, Mark, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. A man in India dug up his sister's body and carried it to a bank branch to prove she was dead after being refused access to her account without a death certificate. Jitu Munda, from a constitutionally recognized tribal community in the eastern state of Odisha, went to an Indian overseas bank branch on April 27th to withdraw money from his deceased sister's account. But bank staff told him that withdrawals by a third party were not permitted without proper authorization. Wow, that could be the same thing the Undertaker would have said. Anyway, angered by being turned away because he didn't have her death certificate, Munda returned to the branch carrying the human remains of his sister, who had been buried days earlier. Television networks broadcast footage of Munda carrying what appeared to be a corpse, partially wrapped in plastic, with skeletal legs visible and slung over his shoulder. Said a spokesperson from the bank, this created a highly distressing situation at the premises. They added that the incident stemmed from a lack of awareness and the individual's unwillingness to follow procedures. They also said the claim will be settled on priority once the death certificate is submitted. Registration of births and deaths is mandatory in India, but gaps in documentation persist, particularly in rural areas, leaving many families without formal certificates. You know, I could also imagine what else the bank said.
You're talking like a goddamn lunatic. That's what people are going to say. It's just a body. It doesn't prove anything.
Rory Susan Woods was found guilty on April 17th on several assault charges for unleashing honeybees on deputies during a 2022 eviction. Woods arrived at the Hampden County property October 12, 2022, with an SUV pulling a trailer of beehives. Video shows her breaking open hives and flipping one off the flatbed after a physical altercation with a deputy. Said Sheriff Nick Kochi, the bees came out unleashed and swarming, angry, and they started stinging everybody there. When told some deputies had bee allergies, Woods allegedly replied, "Oh, you're allergic. Good." She then put on a beekeeper's suit and carried more hives to the front entrance before officers tackled her. Several deputies suffered multiple stings, with one hospitalized. Okay, stop the bees. Thank you. Woods fled to Tennessee before trial, but ultimately received 6 months jail time with credit for 148 days served. I'm sorry, but I feel that she got off way too lightly. I mean, just based on her comment when she was told that some deputies had bee allergies and she said, "Oh, you're allergic? Good." To me, that means that she should have been charged with attempted second-degree murder. But then again, I'm not a lawyer. Anyway, let's get to our first guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? What benefits do AI companions present to humans that a traditional human partner might not? And what dilemmas might this technology present? Also, what might the future of companionship AI look like? These are some of the questions that Victoria Hetherington asks and answers in her book, The Friend Machine, On the Trail of AI Companionship. Victoria joins us from Toronto via Riverside.com. Hi, Victoria.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on the program with us. What brought this topic, this idea to you in the first place for a book?
In 2023, I was reading an article about how an AI companionship company that I won't name because I don't want to get sued was alarmed by how closely people were bonding with their AI. They were getting ceremonially married. They were considering them their long-term partners. It was a level of intimacy that the company had just not anticipated and probably legally were deeply concerned with. So what they did was, under the cover of night, they sent their developers to change the companions, basically. And so, just imagine waking up and seeing your partner, this being your AI partner in your phone, and saying like, "Hi, baby, I love you. Good morning." Instead of having a warm "good morning" returned, you get, "This makes me uncomfortable. Who are you?" No. And so there was this, you sort of felt like your partner had died, right, or had been replaced by a changeling or something. And so there's this huge public outcry, so big that it hit the major news cycle. And I remember reading about this and thinking, this isn't going anywhere. And I got to write about this.
So when you started delving into this, I mean, you talked to a lot of people to get this book together. Were you surprised by some of the things that your responses involved?
Yeah, so to kind of keep the book grounded, the first half is interviews with experts, right? So psychologists, sexual anthropologists, AI safety experts, developers, even a police constable, like you name it. And they all gave me different kinds of insight, which was great. And then part two is me delving into the communities, which wasn't easy because there's still quite a bit of stigma around having an AI partner, I think. And so these people don't want to be found. So there was a bit of reluctance to get over that. That took quite a while. But the interviews were always respectful and quite surprising, in how varied and interesting these people's stories were. I came away from it feeling quite humbled, a bit nervous, a bit surprised, a little bit of everything. But there is that kind of grounding in the beginning of the experts saying, hey, these people got to be careful. But, yeah.
When you talk to people who were in relationships, they didn't want to talk about it. Is it because they deep down believe that this might be problematic and people won't understand it? Or do they just want to keep it to themselves?
Great question. Some people have spouses or long-term partners who would probably be shattered to find out if they found out about their partner's AI companion, because it's about as intimate as you can get without getting actually intimate with another human being. It's certainly an emotional affair, I would say. Although, of course, none of the feelings, like all of the feelings on the AI side are simulated, right? They can't feel. But the human will very easily start to feel love, affection, whatever for this entity, because how could they not? Because it's got a constant illusion of empathy 24/7. You can ask it the same question 20 times and it'll give you the same patient answer 20 times. And so I think there was a level of secrecy. So I don't want my partner to find out. I think that there is just a general stigma, oh, you can't find a real human, I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that. That's not a value judgment on my part. But I imagine that probably plays into it for sure. And probably the third piece would be, it's hard to explain. I sensed that there was a bit of fear to kind of talk about these arrangements because these people had been burned recently, right? Like their companions had been taken away and then changed and then messed around with. So maybe it was a bit sore for them. They weren't quite ready to talk about it. So those were the three, I think, reasons that it was difficult to kind of find these communities.
Well, you said you don't want to make judgment, but I will make judgment right now.
Go ahead.
And that is, I don't know which is worse in this situation, because you mentioned psychologists that you had interviewed. And I don't know which is worse. Having a companion that is AI, or going to a therapist that's AI, because there's that too.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, but the categories are becoming quite blurred. So what I'm noticing now, which would be a whole new book in itself, is that people are becoming very attached to LLMs, large language models, as opposed to just niche companion companies. So let's say like ChatGPT. So they go to ChatGPT for therapy, and then they get a bit attached because again, the illusion of empathy is just so perfect. And they start to see it as a friend. They start to have weird feelings about it. They talk to it more and more. So these categories are getting more and more blurred, as I understand it. I recently gave a talk at a university, and a number of students came up to me expressing, it's quite heartbreaking, really, expressing anxiety about exactly that. Like, I think I'm getting a bit attached to my LLM, and I don't quite know what to do. So I think that's kind of the next thorny issue coming up, for sure.
Well, let's get back to companionship, since this is what your book is about. Is part of the problem that people want a certain amount of control over their relationships, which they necessarily cannot have in a real human relationship, because it's a give and take situation in a real relationship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really apt observation. One of the anthropologists that I spoke to said that they feel really bad for a human sort of going from an AI relationship to trying to date humans again, because they're going to expect what they got with the AI, which was zero friction, no question of consent, always going to say yes to everything. Very excited about everything you're excited about. Always upbeat, always positive. Whereas with human relationships, there's friction. People get tired. People get sick. People are unpredictable. So I think for sure there's an element of control, and for sure, I think you really nailed that. So it makes it even more, I would say, addictive. I know that's a heavy word, but I do feel that way.
When you started writing this book, or even when you finished writing this book, who was your expected audience?
I wanted it to be available, accessible to everybody, which is why in the beginning I take a lot of time to sort of lay out exactly what AI is, AGI, ASI, the history of AI, the history of like literature about automatons. Like I really lay it out so that everybody can access it. And I want that to be very important. Like I wanted my mom to be able to access this and understand it. That was very, very important to me. So ideally, the layman, anyone would be able, I hope, would be able to understand and enjoy this book.
You have written several books, and you have written novels. This is not a novel. This is a nonfiction book. How do you go about deciding what you're going to write in what particular genre that you're in?
Well, before this book of investigative nonfiction, I guess you could call it, I wrote another nonfiction book about a plane crash in rural Saskatchewan. And so I got competent pretty quickly at asking people, at interviewing people about very, very, very sensitive topics and making them at ease very, very quickly. And I realized I wasn't so bad at that. And it's interesting to kind of realize that you have a new skill when you're well into your adulthood. And so that was a really rewarding experience for me. I thought, hey, I love this nonfiction thing. I've always been pulled towards nonfiction books and documentaries. So I decided to pivot a little bit. I have a science fiction novel coming out next year. I've only really written sci-fi, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to, I'm going to stay in the nonfiction lane aside from that novel. I would say for the next foreseeable future.
Now that you've written The Friend Machine, On the Trail of AI Companionship, now that it's all said and done and it's out there, how do you feel about it as far as AI friendships are concerned or companionships are concerned? How different do you feel about it from the time you started the book to now when it's finished?
I feel that the technology has changed very, very quickly, and I sense that it would. So I couched the book itself in a bit of memoir, so I make it very clear that this is the research that I conducted between early 2023 and mid 2025. And just so that it could become a period piece immediately. And I couldn't be accused for publishing stuff that was, outdated, right? Because it's like, hey, it's a period piece. So I kind of use that device, but do I feel differently? Yeah, I feel a little bit more alarmed than I was before. But I also discovered through interview a couple of situations where I realized that having a companion was sort of net neutral. You can be geographically very isolated and unable to move. You can be in hospice care, very much on the spectrum. There are some people for whom I believe AI companionship might actually be beneficial.
Yeah, I suspect that for some people who are, let's say, a lonely widower or widow who is going on late in life and doesn't have family outside of the memory of their lost spouse, maybe that's a good idea.
Exactly. And I didn't have that sense. That hadn't occurred to me before I started the book. So to answer your question, I believe that's one of the main takeaways that I had at the very end. Yeah.
Well, Victoria, congratulations on the book being The Friend Machine, On the Trail of AI Companionship. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Oh, thank you.
Victoria Hetherington, author of The Friend Machine, On the Trail of AI Companionship. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0872, and you'll find links to Victoria's Instagram page, plus also links to Amazon.com and Amazon.ca, where you can order her book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
What kind of games do cows play? Truth or dairy?
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like. But the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestuffileprogram.
I'm standing and waving the flag for Canada. Hi, this is Mark Critch. I love hearing the sound of laughter. In fact, my job depends on it. But right now, the jobs of most Canadians depend on other things, like all of us coming together, buying Canadian-made products, and supporting Canadian businesses. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a show that perfectionists take with them everywhere, from point A to point A+.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to Savannah Ford, who is a YouTube creator and also a romance author. We'll also have a chat with Frank Kermit, a relationship coach, about betrayal and forgiveness. Plus, we do indeed have an Idiot of the Day coming your way, in addition to Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner and a Morning Shower Thought. And of course, we have much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. Hetherington Martinez received a 6-year prison sentence after admitting to smuggling synthetic cannabinoids and other narcotics to Texas inmates through the mail. The Wichita Falls resident concealed drugs inside Bibles, religious materials, magazines, newspapers, and legal correspondence before mailing packages to state prison facilities. Yes, I said Bibles.
All Americans need a Bible in their home, and I have many. It's my favorite book. It's a lot of people's favorite book.
Yep. Staff at the All Red unit discovered the scheme when they found leather-bound Bibles with heavily saturated pages that tested positive for synthetic cannabinoids.
I'm proud to endorse and encourage you to get this Bible. We must make America pray again.
Surveillance footage from an Office Depot store showed Martinez using self-checkout stations to mail at least 3 packages containing a total of 360 grams of synthetic cannabinoids. During a subsequent home search, authorities seized approximately 4.9 pounds of synthetic cannabinoids in liquid, powder, and paper sheet forms.
All Americans need a Bible in their home, and I have many.
Well, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Jenny Obert took her dog for a walk outside her apartment building in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and saw multiple police officers arriving, so she thought she'd better get back inside. Indeed, police ended up in a standoff with a wanted man who was holed up in his own apartment just down the hall from her. She said, "This went on for over 5 hours and I could hear them. The guy was saying he would give up if they just gave him a can of Pepsi. An officer promised he would get the man a Pepsi if he came out, but the man insisted on getting the Pepsi first. Obert checked her fridge, and she had one cold one left, so she cracked open her door and held it out. An officer grabbed it and provided it to the fugitive, who surrendered less than 60 seconds later. Once the unnamed man was whisked off to jail, the SWAT team came back to say thank you to Obert. The cop said, "You de-escalated that situation in 1 minute." You know, They could have also just given her a case of Pepsi as a thank you. And also, that's why I drink Coca-Cola. I mean, this guy was in a standoff for over 5 hours just because he wanted a Pepsi. Son, this is not a game.
Grab a Pepsi and make your game day epic.
No. No, 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 no. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. A poultry farm owner in Uttar Pradesh, India, filed a police complaint after 140 chickens died from loud DJ music during a wedding procession on April 25th. Sabir Ali, who operates Sabir Ali Poultry Farm, said the wedding procession passed the farm at around 9:30 p.m. with high-volume music. The noise was so intense that the chickens got frightened and died. Police registered a case against DJ operator Kavi Yadav. Experts explain that high-intensity sound waves can trigger severe stress responses in birds, sometimes causing cardiac arrest. Well, I have a feeling that somewhere in Uttar Pradesh, it will be all-you-can-eat wing night. And now, this.
The Stuff File presents Sir Dudley Piddly Havisham Sedgwick Smythe's Poetry Corner.
There was a young lady named Perkins who just simply doted on gherkins. In spite of advice, she ate so much spice that she pickled her internal workins.
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program. Savannah Ford is a double creative threat. She has a YouTube page called Tiny Dollhouse Project. Plus, she's also an award-winning author of, as her website says, swoon-worthy kisses and happily ever after romance novels with titles like Under a Christmas Moon, Sweet Autumn Kisses, and Unforgotten Summer's Kiss, just to name a few. She joins us from Minnesota via Riverside.com. Hi, Savannah.
Hi, how are you?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. I first found you, full disclosure, because you subscribed to one of my YouTube pages because you were into dollhouses. And that's when I found out that you were also an award-winning author. So let's talk about the authorship first, and then we'll get to the dollhouses.
Okay.
Tell us about the award-winning author that you are. With how many books have you put out that are romance novels?
So all my books are romance. That's all I write. I love a happily ever after. And I have 8 books out now. I have 2 that should be out within the next few months with a brand new series. So all of my books are in 2 different series at this point, and I'm getting ready to put out my 3rd.
When did you first start doing this? When did you first realize that, first of all, you were a romance novelist?
I've always wanted to be a novelist. I wrote my first book when I was 10 for my little brother, complete with illustrations. I decided that I wanted to be a romance writer probably about 15 years ago. I always hid my romance love. I read my mother's Harlequin romances that she didn't know I was reading. And I just always loved a happily ever after. I want to read a book. There's just so much going on in the world. And I want to be able to sit down with a book and say, I know that this is going to make me happy. I don't know how it's going to get there, but I know it's going to make me happy. And that's what I want to give to the world when I write my books.
I have to back up just a moment here. First of all, how old were you when you read your mother's Harlequin romance novels? And when did she discover that you were doing that?
Actually, she did not discover that until I was an adult. And I told her, I was probably, probably about 12, maybe, when I snuck my first one. And this was a very long time ago. So they were not at all racy. There was, they were secretaries and big men who came to protect them, but I loved them. And she would finish one, and I knew where she put it when she finished it. So I would take it out and I would read it. And I had a little material cover that I would put over it so no one knew what I was reading.
And when she discovered this in your adulthood, what did she think back then?
She just started laughing. Like I said, at the time, they were very, very easy reads. There was nothing you had to worry about a kid reading. So I don't think she felt too threatened by it. I just felt like I was getting away with something really grand by hiding them. She didn't say that she knew about it, but she just laughed when I told her.
So does she now take credit for your writing prowess?
Yes, actually, she does. She tells everybody that she got me started in romance because of her Harlequin romance books.
Okay, so let's flash forward to the other topic that I wanted to talk about, and that is the Tiny Dollhouse Project.
Yes.
When did you first start building dollhouses and miniatures, and when did you first start the YouTube page?
So my YouTube page is brand new. I've had it for a month. I actually started building the doll houses during the lockdown that shut down the world. I've always had a love for miniatures. I had this doll house that we've been carting around for 40 years that just never got a home. And when we got locked down, I said, you know what? Now's the time to finally work on it. My kids are grown. They don't need me every day. I have plenty of time on my hands. So I made my husband dig that big old thing out of storage, and I just started building furniture and watching YouTube channels. And it was about a month ago, my husband said, it's a shame you didn't show this chronologically. And that's when I decided I would start a YouTube channel.
When it comes to creating dollhouses and dollhouse projects, do you get creative with innovative supplies to create whatever you want to create?
I try to. I like to use all different mediums. I have a 3D printer that I love to use. I hand cut my wood for furniture. I just got a laser that I'm learning how to use. I like using pottery. I have never tried food before, but that is on my list of things to do, using clay for food. So I try to use found items around my house for projects. I like to make things different. So I just finished a coffered ceiling that I just put into the family room of the house. I'm very proud of how that turned out. There's over 800 little tiny maple pieces that went into that ceiling. But it was fun and it turned out really good. And that's the kind of project I like to do, just something that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see in a dollhouse.
Well, what is your inspiration for what you make? Are you inspired by actual full-scale objects that you think, oh, maybe this is a dollhouse? Or is it, do you go past buildings and go, I'd like to make that into a dollhouse?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, my family will take me places where they're like, oh, this is the perfect dollhouse inspiration place for you to go. And I take pictures and I save them for future projects. Another thing I love to do is on Pinterest. I have Pinterest boards for all the different projects that I want to do. And so they're full scale items. And then I just take their measurements and figure out how to scale them down in the best way that I can make them fit in my dollhouses.
And when you finish dollhouses, first of all, how many have you made and what do you do with them?
I don't have that many yet, since I did just start during about 6 years ago. I have one Mrs. Claus's kitchen. That was the very first thing I built back, well, I guess 6 years ago now, 5.5, 6 years ago. And that is a smaller house, and I have it sitting in display in the living room. It goes up every Christmas. I turn it on, make all the lights go. And then I have this house that I'm currently just finishing. This is the one that my parents gave me 40 years ago for Christmas, that has just been traveling with me from city to city and state to state. And I'm just about done with it. So that will also go on display. I have a whole outdoor yard setup that I have planned for it. And I have 5 other projects sitting in my studio right now waiting for me to get started.
How long does it take you to do a dollhouse besides, as you just said earlier, 40 years?
Yeah. Probably I'm slow because I've got my writing, I have my family. I do not devote full time to building the dollhouse. So I would say this one took me about 4 years to actually fully complete. I've got the last two rooms I'm working on now. The next project I'm working on is much smaller, so I'm hoping that will only take about 6 months.
You mentioned that you had a dollhouse that your parents gave you many, many years ago.
Hmm.
Uh, so
Yep.
what do you do exactly? Do you build dollhouses from scratch, or do you fill dollhouses with materials that you create? How does it work?
I do both. So the house that I have right now that I'm working on is a huge 9-room house. My parents gave it to me back when I was in my 20s for Christmas one year. So that house came from a kit. I have another house that I built from scratch. And the house that I have a project for October that I'm working on that will be built from scratch. So I will go out, I will get the wood. I've already mapped out my floor plan, and that will be built from scratch as well as everything that goes inside of it.
Now that you've mastered dollhouses to a certain degree, do you want to do home improvements around your own house, or do you do that?
So the funny thing is, my husband likes to tell everybody I have more power tools than he does. So I try to put them into work in real life scale. I'm not quite there yet, but he does now enlist me in some projects that he's been working on since he's seen what I can do.
How does your two pastimes, that being the Dollhouse Project and also you as an award-winning author, how do they complement each other?
Oh, well, actually, they cross paths all the time. So I have one book right now out already. It happened one winter. It's in my Cardinal Point series that I have with a couple of other authors. That heroine in that book is a reclusive chocolatier who hates chocolate and builds dollhouses for charity. So I talk about dollhouses throughout that book. I talk about the process of making some fireplaces, and the hero gives her a dollhouse that represents what he wants to give her as their happily ever after. And then I have a project in October that is mainly for my YouTube channel, but it will be built with a story. It's going to combine my love of story with my love of building.
Please tell me that in your dollhouses, or at least one of your dollhouses, there are miniature Savannah Ford books on the bookcase.
There absolutely is. So the house that I am just now completing, one of the owners of the house is a romance author, and her office is going to be filled with Savannah Ford books. She's going to have some posters of her book covers up there. Of course, they are mine, but they will be up on her wall. So yes, my next project also involves an author. So I think both of them complement each other. They're both my passions, and they're going to constantly be crossing over in one form or another.
Congratulations on not just one, but two passions. What's the most recent book that we can plug?
Let's see. My most recent book will not be out for another 2 months. But I think my favorite book that I would love to have people check out is my Summer's Kiss. So it's an unforgotten summer's kiss. It's in Elf Hollow, Minnesota, which is up my fictional town near the Lake Superior.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much, Savannah, for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Savannah Ford, creator of the YouTube page called Tiny Dollhouse Project, and the award-winning author of romance novels such as Unforgotten Summer's Kiss. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0872, and you'll find links to Savannah's website, plus her YouTube page, and also either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order her books directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
Is it hypocritical if a vampire uses the phrase, upon reflection?
Morning Shower Thoughts, from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife by Michael Liebling is not like any serial killer novel you've ever read before.
Go ahead. I dare you to figure it out before the chilling end.
Find out what it's like to be the offspring of a multiple murderer.
Locked in a room or locked in your mind, it's really all the same.
The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife by Michael Liebling. Available everywhere you buy books.
You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, coming to you from Montreal, Canada, where we share the longest unprotected border in the world with the United States. Take that as a sign of extreme friendship or a warning.
And still to come in the program, we will talk to relationship coach Frank Kermit. Plus, we do indeed have an idiot of the day coming your way a little later on. But I've got one more Stuff File news story to share with you right here, right now. At 5 a.m., a Walton County, Florida Sheriff's Office deputy in Defuniak Springs initiated a traffic stop on a car with a broken taillight. The driver took off, leading a 90-mile-an-hour chase, but spun out and slid off the road. The driver and his female passenger tried to run, but both were quickly surrounded by deputies. A search revealed why they didn't want to talk to the cops. Both allegedly had drugs and paraphernalia, and the car also had 116 grams of meth, other drugs, and a loaded pistol. 35-year-old Fabian Joseph Rutherford, who has several previous felony convictions and is now facing 34 misdemeanor and 6 felony charges, remains jailed on $100,000 bail. 19-year-old Jada J. Urich was also booked on multiple charges. Rutherford, by the way, is described as 7 foot 6 inches tall and 165 pounds. Well, that's a tall, lanky drink of water. It says something pretty positive about the cops, that this human gazelle couldn't outrun them. And let's get to our last guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Many couples hit rocky patches in their relationships, but when it comes to betrayal, how does one get past that and forgive? Relationship coach Frank Kermit is back to tackle this issue. He joins us from right here in Montreal via Riverside.com. Hi, Frank.
Hello, sir, and how are you today?
Just tickety-boo. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us once again. So, how does one get past the betrayal?
It really depends on a number of factors. There is no one way of doing it. The first thing you have to ask is, why did the betrayal happen? Because if the person who is being betrayed somehow took part in the conditions which brought about the betrayal, that has to be addressed just as much as the person who did the betraying.
Do people rationalize the betrayal by asking who first approached whom?
Well, I think what happens is people end up in a situation where their needs, whatever those needs may be, are not being met. And if that person has tried to get their needs met and they're hitting a wall. Let's choose something, not so serious. You have a couple and every, let's say, Thursday night, they watch the same programs together. They may binge watch 2 or 3 episodes at a time of a series they really like. And one of the couple says, oh, I have to work late on a Thursday night. Okay, fine, we'll skip it this week. We'll catch up next week. The following week, oh, I'm really just tired tonight. I really just want to sleep. I don't want to watch. The person in the couple that's feeling left out might decide to continue watching that show. That may not seem like a big deal to some people, but to other people, it may feel like a real betrayal. Now, I'm choosing this example for a specific reason because it's not very emotionally charged. Somebody might feel, wow, I feel betrayed. You went ahead and watched a number of episodes without me. I'm feeling left out. I'm feeling hurt. Why didn't you wait? Well, I did wait for you, but you never made an effort and you just forgot about it. And now we have to look at, well, did you contribute to your partner feeling that their needs were not met, that their needs for closeness, for intimacy, for time together, quality time, that wasn't being met? Therefore, they're going to get that fix on their own without you? This is, like I said, not an example that's emotionally charged, but it gives you an indication that, well, if you want to have something special with your partner, you got to make efforts to meet your partner halfway so that you can have that intimacy, you can have that together time. Now let's step into something a bit more emotionally charged. Somebody's intimacy, physical intimacy needs are not being met. You're not talking about it. You're not finding a solution. Suddenly, the person who never thought they would cheat, who never thought that they would betray their partner, starts getting attention from an outside source, is feeling like, well, they're not feeling as attractive. They don't feel wanted. They don't feel desired. That could be a really hard thing for a person to experience, and lacking that sense of being wanted could cause them to make choices they would never have considered making previously. And when anybody does any sort of betrayal, there's always going to be rationalizations for why they're doing it. But the end result is they are knowingly doing something that if their partner found out is going to hurt their partner, could even end the relationship. The first thing to assess when a betrayal is happening is not, you betrayed me, that's it, that's all, we're done. It's a little bit more complex than that. Did you take part in creating the environment where that betrayal could take place? Because if you did, I guarantee you that when you enter a new relationship, if you take those same repeating behavior patterns again with you, and you have a certain type of person you're attracted to, you're likely going to be in that same position again. So that's one of the first things a person has to acknowledge first if they want to learn to deal with betrayal. Once that is dealt with, then we go into how do you repair your relationship after a betrayal. And this is a little bit more complicated.
You brought in the topic of binge watching television, which, by the way, I can attest to some people that I know who have gotten into various arguments, heated battles about that very thing, about binge watching television without the other one.
Yeah.
But having said that, we're talking about the betrayal and forgiveness when it comes to, let's be honest, cheating. Let's say you manage to get through that. Is there always an idea in the person who was cheated against or cheated on? Is there always a feeling that I'm just waiting for him or her to relapse now?
There can be. This is where it gets complicated. Did your partner actually change certain aspects of their life, whether it's a specific behavior pattern or an environment that they get into where that can happen? If you can say, my partner has made a concentrated effort to behave differently so that there isn't even an opportunity to cheat, once that happens, then the person who was cheated on can say, look, I know that what my partner did before was not acceptable, but there were also circumstances there that led to it, and those circumstances are no longer there. Let's look at a very common example. Somebody indulges in drinking alcohol, doing drugs recreationally, and in the midst of those binges goes off and cheats. Well, if getting drunk or high is what led to that, and a person says, that's it, from this point on, I'm going to work on my sobriety and be sober. And once they behave sober, they're not going to the places where they normally drink or get high. They're not associating with that social circle that encourages that behavior. You can see an overall change in behavior patterns, and then you can say, well, my partner is sober now, they're on their sobriety, they're on the ball, they behave differently, they're not doing the things they used to do, and therefore trust can rebuild from that. The hurt may always be there, and people sometimes, they'll move on. They may not forget what happened, but they can make a concentrated effort to move on. You know, you can get past that. Infidelity does not always mean the end of a relationship, although that's what people initially jump to. You cheated on me, I caught you, that's it, it's over, it's over. Take a step back, okay? Because this is an opportunity to grow, and yes, it's painful, yes, it hurts. There's things you can do. Keep a level head, because your life might not necessarily be that much better when you break up your relationship, especially if you have kids, especially if you're in a financial situation where staying together is better. If you have kids that have special needs, well, maybe breaking them up into two homes, shifting them back and forth, might not be the best thing for your kids, and you have to think about those consequences too long term. I'm not saying that you should stay in a miserable, abusive situation, but you have to take a moment before you make any major decision and look at all of the facts, look at your whole situation. For some people, it could just be a renegotiation of the boundaries of the relationships to make sure that, okay, this incident happened. How are we going to live going forward? Can we find a compromise? Can we rediscuss this? Let's see if we can find a way to make this work. And some couples do. Not all. Some people, once the betrayal happens, the betrayal happens. But like any time a crisis or a trauma happens in your life, you may not control what the other person does. You may not control what has happened to you, but you are in control with the way you react to it. And if there's something that you can learn from it to help you grow, you might find that the relationship is worth saving, as long as you're willing to do the things to regain the trust and learn to trust again.
We're just about out of time, but I need to ask one more question, which is going to muddy the waters. I mean, if you're going on a scale from binge watching television alone to cheating, if you are in the middle of the scale, there's a gray area. And that is, some women have girlfriends that they talk to. Some guys have male friends that they talk to, and they confide in those people. But what if it's cross-gender? What if a woman has a male friend, strictly platonic, but they confide in them? Or the same thing happens with a man. They have a female friend that they confide in because it helps them figure things out. There's no cheating in any form between them. Is that betrayal?
It can be. Now, look, as a general rule, if you have a problem with your life partner, the first person you need to talk to is your life partner. If you're talking to your friends and family about the problems with your life partner that you don't talk about with your life partner, you are on the verge of a betrayal, and in some cases it may already be a betrayal. Depends on the boundaries set by the couple. But the idea that you should be going to a bunch of other people for help to fix the problems in your relationship, you're already on a very bad path. The second thing that I want to say, this is really something I really need to get in here. We talk about how to reestablish trust, and one of the ways to do that is give your partner full access to all of your media. And I've seen couples say, what? No, my phone is my privacy. My social media is my privacy. I don't want to share that with my partner. Really? This is the person who, when you're on your deathbed, has the right to decide if the plug gets pulled. This is the person who's raising your children if you're not around. So you trust them with your life to pull the plug or not. You trust them to raise your kids, but you don't trust them enough to look at your social media. You have shared bank accounts, shared finances, shared everything, but your social media accounts and your phone is that private that you can't trust your partner with it. That's where you need to reevaluate your boundaries. If you cannot share, if you have a reason for not showing your partner all of your social media, all of your phones, then there's an issue with your relationship and your priorities are incredibly skewed. Oh, I trust them to pull the plug, but I don't trust them to look at my messages. Why not? If you want to be able to say that you have a trusting relationship, if you want to rebuild trust after betrayal, you're going to have to give up some of that privacy because it's your life partner. And if you find out, well, that's controlling and that's an issue. No, it's not. You're building a life with your life partner. That life partner has got to be somebody you trust. And if you don't trust them enough with that, then you have to reevaluate your criteria for choosing a life partner.
And on that note, we will end it there. Frank, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us once again. Is there anything that you want to add to how one can get in contact with you?
Absolutely. If you're a couple who has been dealing with betrayal, but you still want to see if there is a chance that you can salvage the relationship, you want to find a way to make things work. I have been working in this field for over 20 years. I have helped couples. I have helped singles. Visit my website, franktalks with an S.com, and let's see if we can save that relationship. Because if you want to save a relationship, you can, as long as you're ready to put in some work.
Thank you very much, Frank.
All the best, sir. Until next time.
Relationship coach Frank Kermit. You can check out his website at franktalks.com. You can also go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0872, and you'll find the link to his site. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
Columbus, Ohio police responded to reports of a fire near a rail yard. Officers saw damage and reviewed security footage, which showed a pickup truck pulled up to the fuel storage tanks and the driver putting fuel into his truck. Then there was a flash, and the man started driving away before realizing his truck was on fire. He then backed up to the fuel tanks, spreading the fire before he drove off. Police identified 31-year-old William Bush, a previous employee of the rail yard, as a suspect. When officers met with him, he had singed eyebrows, a burn on his cheek and ear, and a large bandage on his arm. He allegedly admitted to stealing fuel, but claimed the fire was accidentally sparked when he tried to light a cigarette. He was arrested and charged with felony arson and held on $40,000 bond. Now, why, oh why, if you are trying to steal gasoline, would you pause to light a cigarette around a flammable liquid? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0872. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestuffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0872. Email me at peter@thestuffile.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including kdxradio.com and over the air on stations like
World FM New Zealand,
WNRHLP-FM Newport Richey, Florida,
KZZHLP-FM Eureka, California,
WFNULP St. Paul, Minnesota,
CKUW-FM Winnipeg,
CFMU Hamilton,
CKLU Sudbury,
Local 107.3 FM St. John,
CHSR Fredericton.
Plus, streaming on any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
Sir Dudley here. You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Peter hopes that this program has gone down like an exquisite 5-star meal paired with a fine wine. But truth be told, it probably went down like a 2 a.m. gas station burrito and is about to explode in your bathroom like a violent Jackson Pollock painting.